This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com, and with us we have UFO slash UAP author and researcher Ella LeBain from Who's Who in the Cosmic Zoo.com, who is this is, I think, the third time I've interviewed her. She is an expert on religion and a ufologist. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back, Devin.
You just finished gardening. What did you garden? Do you have a lot of food in there, or is it mostly flowers and stuff?
Oh, it's both. Yeah, I've got some spaghetti squash that's really coming out now, and zucchini and tomatoes and peppers. Yeah, it's fun.
Any praying mantises in your garden?
I'm haven't seen them yet this year.
Do you think they're related to the mantis aliens?
I do. Yes, I think all the insects on Earth are representations or representatives of the insectoid alien kingdom.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Just a smaller version.
Yeah, because I've heard a lot of people suspect, particularly with the mantises, that there's some connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they might, that old saying when they use surveillance and they go, oh, they're bugging your office or they're
Yeah.
bugging you. I mean, I think that there's more truth in that as it just being a slang that that the insects on Earth have this collective consciousness and they're able to report back to their hierarchy, to the upper management of insectoids, so to speak. I'm saying that tongue in cheek, but there's truth in that.
So your latest book here, and here's your buy book page, is The Cosmic Slingshot. That's the
Yes.
most updated one right here. What can we expect in that one?
Well, so that was kind of born of a lot of pain that I received from Christians because when they would ask me about, like, a pastor, actually, a female, it started out with this female pastor asked me about how, like, because she knew that I studied ETs and aliens and asked my opinion about alien abductions because she had people coming to her in her church that were trying to get free of being abducted. And so she asked me, what do you think? How do we stop this? Because praying for them wasn't enough. So when I told her that it goes back to past lives and contracts and agreements that are soul made with these entities, for whatever reason, however it happened, the fact is that it's kind of on them and on you. And then that had to be undone and, repented of and broken, like having a divorce, like breaking a contract, breaking an agreement. She just went ballistic on me and said, I can have nothing to do with you because this is a core belief about, that they deny reincarnation. And that just sent me down the rabbit hole of searching the scriptures, searching the history of when the Bible got edited and how they basically rejected this, reincarnation in the Church of Rome, and that when they edited the Bible, they took it out in 571 AD. So it was there. But, one thing we can always count on is human error. So the Emperor Justinian and his Empress Theodora, they were the ones overseeing the council that were editing the Bible, and she ordered them to take out all references to reincarnation. And of course, they were only as good as their understanding of the language that the original Bible was written in, which was Aramaic Hebrew, and they left all the words that relate to reincarnation about 24 scriptures and a whole chapter on the reincarnation of the ancient Israelites. So they left that all behind. And then when it got translated into English, a lot of those words got glossed over, yet some of them are still there. But because Christians have been told this is, it was a manipulation by the Church of Rome. You've got one life to live. You better get it right with the church. Otherwise, you're going to hell. And, that's obviously a manipulation, but it's not the truth, because that's not what's actually in the Bible. And that's not what the ancient world believed. And that's not what happens. So that's what's in this book, unpacking that, proving that through scripture. Yes, the books of Enoch have it as well. And they rejected the books of Enoch from the Bible canon. They also rejected, there's about 100 ancient Jewish texts that they didn't put in there. And I think the books of Enoch and the first and second books of Adam and Eve were really important for all of us to understand this cosmic drama that we're embroiled in. So that's a piece. And then the whole connection to alien abductions, I've also, connected that dot there, because, even myself, that's how I was able to get free of it and undo it, because I had to take responsibility for what my soul chose in another lifetime to break it in this lifetime. And so that's in the book as well. And then the end time prophecies. And this is something in the prophecies that is very clear. It's written, it's not like ambiguous. It's just like glossed over, goes right over people's heads. And it's written like 3 times throughout the Bible, the Torah, the Old Testament, and the book of Revelation, where it talks about the people who were responsible for the crucifixion of Christ. And that involves the whole conspiracy of the Pharisees, the Sanhedrin, and then, of course, the Romans who did it, and then the crowds of the people who got to choose Barabbas over Yeshua. And all those people who are kind of responsible for it, it says that they are going to be on the earth at the time when he returns, and that they will mourn upon seeing him come, because it specifically says they will mourn upon the one whom they pierced. Okay, so you can't make this stuff up. And that is repeated 3 times. And in the book of Zechariah, it actually is in the first person, like as if the Lord is speaking and saying, they will mourn upon me, the one whom they pierced. So I looked at all this and I was like, how is that possible for all those people who were involved on whatever level to crucify Yeshua, Jesus Christ? And that happened 2,000 years ago, and they're all dead. How could they be on the earth at the time that he returns? And there's really only one logical answer, and that's reincarnation.
What do you say to this hater on here saying you're a fraud, peddling New Age lies? Jesus is the truth of the way. You are Aquarian deceiver. That's a pretty intense fellow.
Aquarian. Okay. First of all, I happen to be a Jew. I'm a completed Jew because
the accent gives it away a little bit.
I've accepted Yeshua as Messiah, so I'm like a messianic Jew. And I'd have to say that Christianity has glossed over a lot of truths in Judaism. In fact, not glossed over. They've intentionally, the Church of Rome suppressed through replacement theologies that was instituted by Constantine, the Emperor of Rome, in 325 AD, established through his creed, Constantine's creed, which not only established replacement theology, but established the doctrines of anti-Semitism into the church. So, we are coming full circle now to we're living in the age of disclosure, which the book of Revelation, in Greek, apocalypse means revelation, means disclosure. So part of all of this suppression of the truth is now coming to the surface. So I would say that it's the Christians who have been mind controlled and deceived through these heresies and doctrines of racism, anti-Semitism, sexism, replacement theology. They're the ones that need to get undeceived by the truth. And the truth is like sunlight. It's a disinfectant. And if you believe a lie often enough, you believe it as truth. So when the truth comes, you think it's the lie. And that, as a matter of fact, is a curse in Isaiah 5, verse 20. Woe to those who turn evil into good, good into evil, light into dark, dark into light, sweet into bitter, and bitter into sweet. So this is done through what the Bible talks about as the twisted serpent spirit. And that is the narcissism that comes from denial, projections, blame shifting, and gaslighting. So we're living in an age right now that has to do with learning and exercising a spiritual and intellectual muscle called discernment. So discernment is a spiritual gift that comes from the Holy Spirit, but it also has to do with the intellect to be able to discern the word of God rightly, which is something that I have attempted to do in my book series, to expose these heresies so that true believers can have understanding and not be held back by these alien implants that came from the Church of Rome.
You mentioned UFO abductions. Who do you think are the main alleged extraterrestrials that are performing these abductions? Is there certain breeds in particular that are doing it more than others?
Yes, that's a great question. So mainly the grays, they're the ones that show up, but you also have the Nordics, the human looking ones, but the grays are servants. They're working for the reptilians, and the reptilians don't usually show up in abductions. So once in a while, people have had experiences with these lizard men, where they report getting raped and scratched and all kinds of horror stories. But for the most part, it's the grays. And so they're a lot of them are cybergenetic hybrid Borg type beings. They're not all flesh. Some of them are like they're part biologics and part technology. I have several stories in my first book, Discerning Them, where a woman who had an abduction with the Greys and she went after them. And you know how like they have the big black almond shaped eyes. And she went and, went after him and her hand went into his eye and it was a TV screen. She described that what was underneath the black eye were all these like wires. So it was almost like they were, like little robots. So they're controlled by a higher being. And that would be what I call the draconian hierarchy, or the Dracos, or the reptilians, or the lizard men. And they're all based, they're existing, they're coexisting with us inside the earth. They're also inside the moon, and they're also underground on Mars. That's what we know so far based on lots of witnesses and experiencers, and the CIA project that went on in 1980 that had to do with time. They were trying time travel in another way. They've been trying it for years. And they created this jump room Segunda, California, through this elevator, and they were able to, they called it the Mars jump room, and they were able to time travel to Mars. And so the people who were involved in that, they came back and they said, like they were gone for maybe 5 minutes on Earth, and they were like on Mars for like 20 years. And they talked about 3 different types of life forms on Mars. And one of them was this like Plethosaurus type creature, like, like a small dinosaur. And there were grays and reptilians, and they had to defend themselves with weapons against these beings. So these are stories, and they're corroborated by about 15 different people who claim to have been involved in Project Pegasus. So I have that whole story in my first book.
Very interesting. There's a few people asking about the Dracos and the Archons. I'm not really familiar with this, but I'm sure you know what he's talking about. Sage Puck and John were asking about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And yes, they are connected. So the Archons are, like that phrase got coined by the Gnostic Gospels. So it had to do with like the demiurge and this being that was named Yahweh Yaldabaoth, which in Hebrew literally translates to Yahweh the little child. And this was this we believe it was the first Nephilim creature that had the head of a lion and the body of a dragon, and that it lives inside the earth, and it's still there. And the book of Job in the Jewish Bible talks about Leviathan. And if you compare the descriptions of Leviathan and this Gnostic demiurge, they're kind of one and the same. If they're not the same, then they're like on that same hierarchy. They're in the same grouping. So I think that what happened with the fallen angel story, this is, Christians call it the fallen angel story because but it actually was about men, okay, extraterrestrial men. So when angels showed up in the Bible, they always showed up as humans, mostly men. There was only one instance that it was a female. But the story that's in Genesis 6, that's also in the books of Enoch in much more detail, was 200 B'nai HaElohim, meaning the sons of the gods, plural, came to Mount Hermon through this ancient space portal and came to Earth, and they were all named, all 200 of them, and they were in rebellion to the creator God. And it says they came through the portal and then they took wives. They didn't exactly like, okay, that whole term taking wives wasn't like, oh, raping women. They took wives and they married them. Okay, so they came through this covenant of marriage, which, biblically speaking, has to do with spiritual legal ground to have the rights to a birthright, to propagate, to have a bloodline. And that's exactly what they did. So this story is reiterated in Genesis 6. And so they got cursed. It's like it's a whole drama because the women who gave birth to their children gave birth to miscreants. The genetics did not work. They were giants. They were monsters. It says they lusted after both all flesh, both humans and animals, and they did horrible things. So the Creator God had to get rid of them by creating this flood. And this was the second flood, by the way, because the Bible begins after the first flood had ended, which were the floods of Atlantis and Lemuria, because Genesis 1:2 says, and the Spirit hovered over the waters of the earth. And then they started to recreate and repopulate the earth. And when they did, it was the Elohim, and it was all done. It was the whole creation sentence is in its plurality. Let us make man human in our image according to our likeness, and they made them male and female equally. So that was the what we call the Evidemic race, and they had, like, the 12 strands of DNA. It says that Adam and Eve walked and talked with God. They had awareness. They had all these things, and also the beginning of the Bible, most of them lived to be in their 900s. Like Methuselah lived to be 969. Then came the floods of Noah, and this was an attempt to get rid of these the Nephilim, these miscreants, these giants. And so after the floods of Noah, there was a genetic downgrade to humankind, Homo sapiens sapiens, that would be us. And people didn't live past 80, 90, that kind of thing. Like our telomeres go up to 120. Most people are lucky to live into their 80s. So something significant happened. And that was that they basically genetically manipulated and artificially shortened to the lifespan to facilitate the recycling of souls through reincarnation. So this is the piece that I connect in the cosmic slingshot to the alien abductions and the soul harvesting. So it's a thing. Let's just put it that way.
So the aliens, they don't have souls, and that's why there's allegedly harvesting our souls, is what some people say. Is that why?
Yes. Only the creator God can create a soul. So what they've been doing is counterfeiting. I mean, they can create bodies. They can create flesh and blood and make it look human, but they have to put something in it. And so they steal pieces from us. So they harvest our memories. They can take memories out of one person and insert them into another person. And basically our life force, which is our, like the Monroe Institute coined the phrase loosh, which is like soul energy, which comes off of us all day long, okay, even when we're sleeping and even when we die. So it's not just the death process, it's stuff that goes on in life. And I always say there are worse things than death, because people go through horrible things here on this planet, torture and torment, where they can't die and they wish they could die, and they're in misery, and they come and they siphon that energy off. So they don't really care if it's positive or negative, if you're happy and elated with passion in a good way, or you're passionately angry and raging and doing horrible things. Energy is energy to them. So yeah, they can't create a soul.
Now, where you're mentioning about death, I did talk to another author that claimed to be an expert in death, and he believed that you don't necessarily get rid of everything bothering you when you pass away. So, for instance, the people that commit suicide, some of that might stick with them on the other side. They might not be necessarily free of everything burdening them. What do you feel about that?
Yes, that's a good point. And I have a chapter in the book about that, especially suicides, because there are people who are alive today. In fact, one of the editors of my book, he edited this because of his understanding. He's a remote viewer, and his understanding as a reincarnationist, and his understanding of his past life. And that he was, I'll just tell you to real kind of briefly, he was in Nazi Germany, and he was forced as a soldier as one of the Nazis to do things that he could not do. So he shot himself in the head and he committed suicide. So he got that information through memory, through multiple sources in this life. And it is like also reflected in his astrology chart. I mean, there's all these connections to that. So the point is that people come back to correct things. This is what the Torah says. This is what the Church of Rome completely covered up. But it's been there all along, just misunderstood. So the Torah says that we live, we reincarnate, or we rebirth for what they call teshuva, which means correction and evolution. So like if you did something in a past life, and they also call it like going through the afterlife, going through this like cosmic washing machine. it's kind of just a term. And then that is the cosmic slingshot. So I got the title cosmic slingshot right out of the Torah, because King David was the one who to coin that phrase. So in Hebrew, it's kafakela. And kafakela means the cup of the slingshot. And of course, everybody knows the famous story about King David and how he killed a giant with a slingshot when he was a young man. And so then his wife coined the phrase, the cosmic slingshot, saying all your enemies are going to go through the cosmic slingshot and come back to you in another life. And this has always been the basis, the foundation, the core of Judaism. Okay, so it was the Church of Rome that kind of suppressed that. Jews never stopped believing in it. They talk about past lives like people talk about what you ate for dinner last night. It's like, oh, who were you in a past life? So the fact that somebody might come back after they committed suicide in a previous lifetime is exactly what happens, because the soul has to learn to correct it has to correct itself to be faced with whatever situation that caused it to give up, and be faced with it and overcome it. So, it's kind of like you going to the gym and saying, okay, I'm going to raise the bar next time and I'm going to overcome that. And then not overcoming it and giving up is something that the Creator God doesn't really want from us. He wants us to work through it, to overcome it. And there are things that we can't do on our own. So we need God. We need a relationship with the living God. And people get sent back just to figure that out. And I prove this. This is not only evidenced in scripture, but it's evidenced in people's stories, like near-death experiences, where like one of the most famous ones was Howard Storm, who was this atheist. He was an artist, and he went to Paris to do like artwork and stuff like that. His life was a mess. He was married, he had kids, he was cheating on his wife, he was gambling, he wasn't a good father, he wasn't a good husband, he didn't believe in God, and he ends up on an operating table in Paris, France, waiting for life-saving surgery, something with the intestines that they had to surgically, and he literally died waiting for socialized medicine to come and save him. And he dies on this operating table, and he goes to hell. Okay, he goes down this black hole, and he's like cycling through it. And he describes this as these beings came and was like chewing off of his ear and his body and chewing him. And he kept sinking deeper and deeper and deeper into this pit until he heard a voice from above command one word, and it said, pray. That's it, pray. And he's descending, and he's thinking to himself, pray? I don't know how to pray. Nobody ever taught me how to pray. How do I pray? And he goes deeper and deeper until he uncovers a memory when he was 5 years old, that in kindergarten, when he was taught this song, Jesus loves me, this I know, 'cause the Bible tells me so. So he repeated it, and immediately this hand reaches down, pulls him up out of the pit, and brings him up to heaven, and puts him right before Jesus, sitting on his throne. And then he starts to realize how wrong he was, how, his atheism, whatever he was, and he starts feeling like repentant and, oh God, please forgive me, all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, the Lord says, yes, I forgive you, but I'm going, and he didn't want to leave. He wanted to say, oh, I want to be with you I don't want to stay here forever. This is what I've been missing. And then the Lord said to him, but I'm sending you back, because I want you to learn how to live right for me, and be a good person to others, and fix your marriage and be a good father, and all those types of things. And meanwhile, on the operating table, the surgeons arrived and he was flatlined. So they, did the paddleboard thingies and brought him, got a pulse, completed the surgery. It took him about a year to really recover from it all. And during that year, he talks about visitations from angels. So they helped him to completely turn his whole life around, because it was God's will for him to learn how to live right. So I connect that dot in the book and I say, well, what difference does it make if the Lord puts you back into your body, after a near-death experience, or gives you a new body and sends you back for the same reasons? Okay, is to learn how to be a good person, how to live right, how to love your neighbor, be good to your wife, be good to your husband, be good to your children, all these things, because this is God's plan. So people can come back for all kinds of reasons. And the Torah says that a righteous person can live up to 1,000 generations. That's like 1,000 lifetimes. And it's not always linear. The Torah and the Zohar go into life on other realms, life in other time zones, timelines, culture. Just because you're born one thing in one life doesn't mean you're going to be the same thing in another life, and then, of course, there's the aspect of karma, having to learn lessons and work things out. So there's a million and one reasons why people reincarnate.
I don't know if you've heard about this today, but you probably have heard about this interstellar object coming towards Earth. And it's actually in the New York Post today that some scientists are saying is possibly hostile. I guess that's a picture of it.
Mm-hmm. I
Have
did.
you heard much about this?
Yep, I've been following this.
What are your
So,
thoughts on it?
well, a couple of things. First of all, they're labeling it 3I Atlas. So that stands for the third interstellar object. And then they called it Atlas because they initially believed it was a comet. So Oumuamua was the first interstellar object that Harvard professor Avi Loeb had a lot to say about that. He wrote a whole book about it, that it really wasn't a comet, that it was some type of probe, which is why it was called a Oumuamua in Hawaiian, which meant scout. So it was some type of interstellar scout ship, probe, drone, that kind of like technology, but it wasn't a proper comet. So I find it interesting that they're labeling this as 3I. This is the third interstellar object. And then the second one was 2I Boris. And so what do I think? This is part of the Nemesis Nibiru system that is intersecting in our solar system. And I think when I spoke to you the first time, I told you about that and how it's a parade of objects that precede the passage of what people call Nibiru or Planet X. I mean, it has a lot of names. And because it has this debris tail, and the debris tail is full of junk, okay, all kinds of stuff, like comets and asteroids and meteorites and fireballs and technology, okay? Because let's not forget that we have these ancient records. There's nothing new under the sun. We have these ancient records that tell us the last time and the time before when Nibiru passed the earth. And the Anunnaki, and in the Jewish Bible, they're called Anakim. Okay, so they're like kind of the same, the extraterrestrial beings that came from these realms. And they have spaceships, and we're seeing them around the sun. So the fact that they're calling this an interstellar object without just labeling it as a comet like they do with everything else, I find that interesting because just like Uma Uma, at first everybody said it's a comet, and then Avi Loeb said, no, it's not behaving like a comet. It's behaving like it has intelligence. So why are they labeling this 3I, meaning it's another interstellar object? So we'll see. We'll see. It's not going to hit the Earth. It's going to pass, but it's the third one. And I think that a lot of this parade of objects began, and comets included, began in 1990s. So if you remember 1994, the Shoemaker-Levy, that whole string of comets that just slammed into Jupiter. And in a way, Jupiter kind of took the blow for Earth because it protected the Earth from getting hit with that. And then there's another one that hit the moon, and we're not out of the woods yet with this. So,
Do you think this has anything to do with the Jeremy Corbell prediction of him trying to say there's supposed to be some type of false narrative from the government saying an object is coming towards us with nefarious intentions?
it could be. It could. I mean, like, I like connecting dots, and I've definitely taken note of that one, because he said when he was pressed on it by that producer, and he said, if I give you a date, they're just going to change the date. So I find that interesting that they can manipulate time and they can manipulate events. And we know that they can do that through CERN. They've been opening up portals. They've been letting beings in and out through these portals. So he did say that there was this mothership or this fleet of ships or something coming into our solar system space in 2027. Personally, from my research, I think it's all part of the same ball of wax, and that is the Nemesis Nibiru system intersecting in our solar system like it does every 3,600 years. And it comes with a bunch of stuff. And we're seeing spaceships around the sun. I mean, I have pictures of them, and they're, there's over a dozen space telescopes that are focused on the sun, that they're studying the sun, what's happening around the corona. The sun is going through this unprecedented solar maximum cycle. And every now and then we see technology. We see things that are not comets or solar flares, or they're ships, so I wouldn't be surprised if something's going to pass through in 2027, whether it lands here or not. I mean, it might just be passing through, just like a lot of these other pieces. I mean, I have pictures from 2003, 2011, it just shows up like several times a year. We see spaceships around the sun. So the sun is like a stargate.
UFO Tar Heel wants to know if you think there's a designated emissary like Alina Danan, which I'm probably mispronouncing her name, who claimed to be a bridge between us and other groups.
Well, I'm going to decline from speaking about her because.
Who is she, by the way?
All right, I'm going to speak about her. All right.
Well, I don't know who she is, but UFO Tar Heel obviously knows more than me. Just to know who that
is. Okay. So I'll give it to just in a nutshell. She's an experiencer. The difference between her and I is that she still has her implant. I had mine removed. Okay. So she has an
implant. We're not talking about boob implants here.
No, alien implants.
Oh, like tracking implants.
Tracking and communication devices. So she claims to have an implant so that she can receive information and be like a messenger to these aliens that she calls the Galactic Federation of Worlds. Okay, so, a lot of this stuff is part of this ancient cosmic war or angelic war. Again, it's detailed and named in the books of Enoch and in the Bible. And I just have to say up front that there is such a thing as a false light. Okay, there's counterfeits all over the place. In fact, we are living through an age, the end of this processional age of Pisces that we're in, preparing, we're resolving things that need to be resolved for this age, and we're having this overlap of the age to come, which is the age of Aquarius, which is all the technology and the space travel and consciousness and all of that. So it's all happening like a confluence, right? But at one of the big tests at the end of this age is about discernment, okay? Because there's multiple, it's a zoo. That's why I call it a cosmic zoo of aliens. There's a bunch of different groups, and they're not all on the same page. Okay, they're not all on the same page with each other, and they're not all on the same page regarding us Earth humans, Homo sapiens sapiens. So there's a lot of manipulation. There's a lot of wanting to get power over us through deception, through counterfeiting, through manipulation of words and all that kind of stuff, which has been going on for millennia. And I think she's kind of wrapped up in that. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say about her, because she claims, this by her own admission, that she chose not to get rid of the implant so that she can continue communicating with these beings. And I think some of her information is good, because let's face it, okay, a good deception has to have truth sandwiched between two lies for people to even believe it or pay attention to it. And there's a lot of stuff that she's said that is not accurate. So I'll just leave it at that. Okay. And one more thing is that there's all these people making these names up, right? A Galactic Federation of Light, Galactic Federation of Worlds, which is like her thing. So let's talk whistleblower. All right. One of the biggest whistleblowers of this decade, 2020, the retired Israeli space chief Chaim Eshed came out in November and December of 2020 and said that the United States and Israel are in working agreements with the Galactic Federation on Earth. Okay. Now, in Hebrew, such a specific language. He did not say of worlds. He did not say of light. He said on Earth. So I took note of that because, as you know, it's my premise, my conclusion that the alien presence is here with us on Earth, that they coexist, that they live inside the planet. So when he said that, I thought that was like a big truth bomb. And then he also said that President Trump knows about it. And then he also said that
Now, was that this year too? Because I think recently that news was recycled, wasn't it? About President Trump, because it also came out like in the last few months that he had said President Trump knows about it. So I'm just wondering, since you've been following it, was that just put out again, or did he say it new?
I think it was just repeated from 2020 because Chaim Eshed's kind of like gone under the radar. But of course now, President Trump is president again, and he's trying to create transparency through releasing declassified files. And so that got resurfaced and sort of processed with the wash and all of that stuff, which is interesting, okay, to follow and to watch, all right, because of the Mars piece. So before the program, I think I was telling you about the Mars piece. And this is this Project Pegasus, it was called. It was a CIA time travel project. And they did it in 1980. And there's about 15 names. And, I can read them to you if you're interested. And
Sure, why not?
Okay. One of the, here, Here, let me just get it out of the book here. One of the chrononauts, who he's called, he calls himself, is Andrew Basiago. And so he was in the same class as Barry Soetoro. They were all born in 1961. This happened in 1980. They were 18. And they were recruited as young men, older boys, actually, because this is an ongoing thing that they use, like from the Montauk Project. They would use these young boys because of the psychic energy. So they put them in this program. His father was also overseeing the program, whose name was Raymond Basiago, who was an engineer for Parsons, and became this technical consultant between Parsons and the CIA on teleportation. So they created all this. So before I read you the names, let me just finish telling you what Chaim Eshed said, that the United States, yes, it's Barack Obama, Barry Soetoro, that the United States and Israel were working together in these joint agreements with the Galactic Federation on Earth, putting astronauts on Mars. He actually said this, and this was written down in the Yedidot Achronot in November of 2020. Then the journalists co-authored a book with him called "The Universe Beyond the Universe." The Universe and Beyond the Horizon, which was his book about, because he was a astrophysicist, but he had about 13 pages in there that was focused on the UFO crashes all around the world, not just here in America, and the beings that were retrieved from these crash sites. So I have that information. If anyone wants that, it's in a PDF. They can email me, and I'd be happy to send it to them for free. It's, this is getting the truth out. Anyway, so I took note of that because of the Mars piece, and I have the story that I was given by Andrew Basiago. In fact, him and I became friends, and then he gave me permission to publish it, as well as he edited it for accuracy, because I wanted to make sure I have all the facts straight. So it's a chapter in my book, the first book, Who's Who in the Cosmic Zoo. So I'm just going to read you the names. So these are 15 Americans that were connected with the CIA's Mars Jump Room program from the early 1980s. And they agreed that their instructor was Ed Dames, remote viewer Ed Dames, and that their class had 10 young people, 5 of whom were identified, and they were Andrew Basiago, who is an attorney in Vancouver, who would reveal the program after the writing of the first work of natural history to show that Mars was inhabited. And his paper was called Life on Mars. So that's out there. And then Regina Dugan, who was a prodigy enrolled at Caltech, who in 2009 would be appointed the first female director of DARPA by Obama. Then William C. McCool, who in 1996 joined the Space Shuttle program as a pilot. Barack Obama, who was known then as Barry Soetoro, who became the 44th president of the United States. William B. Stillings, valued by the program for his technical genius. 3 of their parents audited the lectures in 1980, and that was Raymond Basiago, who I already told you was a consultant between Parsons and the CIA for teleportation. And then Thomas Stillings, an operations analyst at Lockheed Skunk Works, and Barry's mother, Stanley Ann Dunham, who had ties to the CIA working with USAID. And then, of course, her father, was a lifelong CIA agent, so he put her in charge of the program and he oversaw it. And Bernard Mendez, who was introduced to the class as an Air Force officer, who would join the program as a fellow jumper in the Mars Jump Room to write a report about it afterwards, which he did. And Andrew Basiago, who came forward publicly with the Mars Jump Room account in the media, and people could look that up. He's all over the place. And his story was corroborated with Laura Eisenhower, who was the great granddaughter of President Dwight D. Eisenhower. And she disclosed in 2006 and 7 that they attempted to recruit her to join the secret US colony on Mars, but she declined. So she's out there talking, about that, and you can always reach out to her and
So
get
did
the
he
story.
mention anything about Elon Musk in this? Would Elon Musk be aware of this already, do you think?
There's no mention of Elon Musk in Basiago's report. However, I think so. I think he must know about this. And let me just
We haven't
finish.
heard as much about that. Just not to interrupt, but sorry, we haven't heard as much about this Mars colonization from him. It was a big deal like 3 or 4 years ago, but in recent years it seems to be not talked about as much. But yeah, sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. So yes, well, the Project Artemis, which is NASA's present program to put the first woman on the moon and establish a lunar base on the moon to create a launch pad to send rockets to Mars. That's Project Artemis. So this is like not a secret thing. It's kind of a out there thing for NASA. And, like I even have the T-shirt "Occupy Mars." I mean, they sell T-shirts. They want to occupy Mars. It's not a secret. Okay, so the fact that Elon Musk wants to occupy Mars, I'm sure he knows about all of this because it's out there. Okay, so and I'm just going to finish reading the names, and then I want to tell you what they said, like the conclusion, and that sort of will answer the question about Musk. So anyway, I was telling you about Eisenhower, Laura Eisenhower. So Basiago and Stillings identified one of their Mars team leaders as Courtney M. Hunt, who was a career CIA officer. Basiago and Mendez recalled going on the jump at night to Mars with Regina Dugan, Mary Jean Eisenhower, who's a granddaughter of President Eisenhower, so not the great granddaughter, but a granddaughter. There were, several family members in here. Basiago and Mendez also encountered Admiral Stansfield Turner, director of Central Intelligence under President Carter, on Mars. So all three identified Michael Strickland as the Navy attaché at El Segundo, which is where the elevator was, the Mars jump room. They used an elevator. So, and this is the conclusion. So, according to Basiago, the whole purpose of the Mars jump room program was threefold: that they went to Mars in the early 80s. Few facilities existed besides the jump room facilities, and they were fending for themselves in a frontier-like situation, with guns and weapons against these aliens. And the mission included helping to support the establishment of a defense regime on Mars to protect the Earth by creating a basis for the United States to claim territorial sovereignty of Mars. So I think that underscores the whole program and acclimating the Martian humanoids and animals to our presence. I mean, there's a lot more to this. You can read it in my book, but I think
Martian humanoids and animals.
yeah.
What can you tell us about those?
Well, he said that there were three types of life forms that he encountered on Mars. The plesiosaurus type creature that was like a lizard, that was like, not as big as a giant dinosaur, which were the giant lizards.
But... Oh, so hold on. Chaim says he was actually on Mars himself?
No, he didn't say he was on Mars. He said that they were sharing astronauts.
Oh, okay.
Between Israel and United States in the secret space program to establish this base on Mars. So when you connect the dots here, and which I have attempted to do in my book, it dovetails into the public program that is not secret that I told you about, like Project Artemis, and how the astronauts wear these T-shirts, Occupy Mars, and Elon Musk, his goal is to go to Mars. And so it's all part of the same ball of wax, in my opinion.
There's another UFO Tar Heel question. So, are they traversing through oceans or bodies of water if they're inner Earth beings? Or are there interdimensional portals here that they rely on for moving about?
Great question. Well, yes. In 2003, and this is out there, people can Google it and you'll still see it. NASA disclosed, and of course, these articles go under the radar, they don't make a big deal about it, um, disclosed that the Earth has portals all around it that open and close all day long. Okay. So that they use portals. It's ancient. So I have done work on this through through suggesting, this is my hypothesis, if you will, that why are there crashes, UFO crashes at certain sites that seem to happen more than once? Okay. So I have this, hypothesis that maybe it's because there are beings trying to get through these ancient space portals and they're having battles with the gatekeepers. Maybe they're not supposed to go through. Maybe they don't have the password right. Maybe they're, and they're colliding into these gates. And there's stargates, portals all around the planet. So let's go back to ancient world just to kind of illustrate this, the reality of it. So like Sitchin, Zachariah Sitchin translated the Sumerian and cuneiform tablets. And one of the things that he exposed were these ancient spaceports. And what they used to do when the ETs would land on Earth is they had these like spaceports where the spaceship would land, and it landed on like a platform. And then when they left, okay, and didn't come back, the human beings that were left on the planet made temples, created and built a temple on top of those spaceports and worshiped them as gods. And we see this through the ancient world, through India, through Mesopotamia, through Iraq, Persia, and Israel. So like the big space portal that they're fighting over is Jerusalem, because that's where there was a lot of activity in the past. Jesus went up and the angel said, just where you see him go, he's going to return in that same spot, right on the Mount of Olives. And, you have on the Temple Mount the whole story about Muhammad and how he went up, same space portal. And now you have this mosque, which it used to be the Jewish temples. So there was 2 Jewish temples. They got destroyed. And then the Al-Aqsa Mosque is now on that site. So the end time prophecy points to a 3rd Jewish temple. So anyone looking at this today will go, scratch their heads and go, how is that possible? How could there possibly be a Jewish temple when the Muslims are not letting it happen? Okay. But the prophecy unfolds and says that there is going to be a counterfeit Messiah, which all those prophecies point to the Muslim Mahdi. And they're waiting for this Mahdi to come, and it says that he is going to end the war against Israel, because there's going to be like a world war. Well, 10 nations, 10 caliphate nations. I'm just giving you Bible prophecy here. Okay. I'm not telling you this is happening right now.
A
It's beginning.
prophecy of a war in Israel, really.
Yeah, well,
I'll
I
never
know
believe
that's
that.
easy to believe now because it's beginning, like it's the stage is being set, but it's not full blown yet. So it's like 10 nations go against Israel, and this being emerges out of that war. And in the Bible, it's called the War of Gog and Magog, which is the Ezekiel chapter 38. So Ezekiel chapter 37 has already been fulfilled. So we can check that off as a fulfilled prophecy. And that is the reincarnation of the ancient Israelites coming back to the land and not only settling there, but it says that they would become a great army again. And you can say that has happened with the IDF. So the next phase is this war against Israel, and that this being emerges through this war. The war has to happen first. Then he comes up and he creates peace, a peace treaty between Israel and all of her enemies. And there is this false peace. There's 3.5 years of false peace. And he allows the Jews in Israel to rebuild that temple. Okay, so it's done through some sort of agreement. Right now, it can't happen, but this is the future thing. It could also happen. This is another piece that could possibly, facilitated is an earthquake, because there is fault lines under there, and there's that area of the world like Rome and Greece and Israel seem to be under a similar fault line, because there's been all these earthquakes in Greece lately, like Santorini Island, and even rumblings in Italy. And then it says, so that old saying, like Rome wasn't built in a day. The prophecy says it gets destroyed in one. So that could be an earthquake, okay, or part of this war. Anyway, so this counterfeit Messiah emerges up. They rebuild the temple. He sets himself up in the temple and expects them to worship him as God. And that's when all hell breaks loose. Okay, so that's when the Jews realize that they, got involved with the wrong Messiah, or, and it's a deception. And they start the animal sacrifices, which they've already begun just off site. But once the temple gets up, it says they're gonna do animal sacrifices again, and that this Antichrist figure, this counterfeit Messiah, Mahdi, is going to, his name, his title in the Bible is Gog. That's a title, and he ends the animal sacrifices, and that's when all hell breaks loose, and he starts beheading everyone for not worshiping him as God in this third Jewish temple. So, with all this fodder that I'm telling you, all these stories, and this is prophecy, and as well as ancient history, it's all happening on the same location, which is this ancient space portal. Okay, so you wonder, it's not just the surface of the politics and the wars and all of that, and the holy war. It's a religious holy war, but it's also a cosmic battle over these stargates, over these ancient space portals, and who gets to control them. So I think, whoever asked the question about the portals, that's a very real thing.
Max has a question. If we're doing so horribly, what are the chances that we could get some intervention from some positive advanced beings, or is that asking too much?
No, not at all. We already are. I mean, this is a battle between good and evil, and the good angels, heaven's angels, the faithful angels, and these fallen angels. So, human beings are given free will, and all we have to do is choose the right side. And when you're in a right relationship with the living God, all you got to do is ask. So people pray, prayer is a very real phenomenon. And it's not
Yeah,
about,
do you think, here's a question, because someone posted earlier you look like Hulk Hogan's ex-wife, Linda Hogan. Here's a question about prayer. He recently died, and they decided to keep it a secret right up until the time of his death, that he was really deathly sick and could pass away. Do you think it would have made a difference? Because he always kind of said, train, say your prayers, eat your vitamins. If all of his fans that were religious were actually praying for him to pull through it, do you think it would have made a difference?
I don't know. I think when somebody's time is up, it's up. And I don't think death is the end of us. So I heard that he became a believer in Jesus Christ before he died. So that's who he went to see on the other side. So I'm positive of it, because I think that,
He
it's
became a believer, then he opened up a beer company. So
well,
maybe that's why they took him.
beer is a commodity. There's a lot of
Yeah.
Christians that run beer companies here in Colorado. I mean, Coors beer is run by a Christian family. I mean, beer is, Jesus turned water into wine. I mean, everything
Yeah.
in moderation. I don't think, beer isn't evil in and of itself. It's, people do too much of it. I mean, so I'm not judging. It's not my place to judge, and it's not our place to judge another soul. But we know, based on very simple promises of God, that whoever calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. It's that simple. So you do that, and faith is a currency in the universe, in life and in death, you know, evidenced by the story I told you about Howard Storm, and how he got sent back. I mean, all somebody has to do is call on the name of the Lord and get saved. And I think he did that. And I'm pretty sure he's with him now. And, you know, it's sad for his wife and his family, but death is not the end. There are worse things than death.
Probably. Last fan question here. Burley wanted to know, and I missed this one earlier, how do they extract and capture the soul? You were talking earlier about one of the things that happens in abductions is capturing the soul.
Yes. Well, I think they do it with technology, that they're able to. So, like, here's the thing. So, remember, I was telling you earlier about how we got um, genetically downgraded, that we started out with 12 strands of DNA and now we have two. And the geneticists will look at our DNA and say, that's junk DNA because it's disabled. And this is where all these promises of God come in, which has to do with the restoration of humankind and restoring all things, because the fall of humankind was a bunch of curses on men, women, the earth, animals, the serpent, and that when Yeshua, the Messiah, returns, he promises to restore all things and restore us back into that glory body. I call it glory body, light body, the 12 strands, because we're not all operating on all 12 cylinders. So the aliens can see what we can't see. Okay, so they can see our energy. So it's like, I am not in my body is in me. Because when the body ceases to exist, the soul is still there. Okay, so it really it's really a matter of who your soul belongs to. So if you don't align and reconcile with the creator of your soul, who you can call God, Yeshua, Jesus, there's many names, then the reptilians, when death comes, are going to come and like take everything that they feel belongs to them and discard the rest. And that's what David in the Torah is talking about, this like cosmic slingshot washing machine that the souls go through, and these beings come and pull stuff away, memories, implants, things that they make claims over, your energy, spiritual legal ground, because maybe you made a Faustian contract with them. Maybe you rebelled against God. Maybe you hate God. I don't know. There's a million and one reasons why this happens, and we're in this battle. So the the point is to get aligned, is to get right with the Creator, because when you take your last breath, that's where you go, and then they can't siphon your energy. How they do it, I really don't know. I'm sure it has some kind of technology, because they're able to take memories out of one person and put it in another, or put it in an avatar, or put it in a hybrid, and we see this happening. And there's nothing new. This has been going on
Yeah.
for a long time.
Have you heard that? Maybe that's what you're talking about, that they can be immortal supposedly by doing these hybrids and then transferring the soul to the hybrid. So even if this body's shot, they can continue living through this other body.
Yes, I think that's a big piece of the alien hybridization program, alien human, because if they're abducting humans to take pieces from us, whether it's eggs from women, sperm from men, skin grafts from both of us, memories from both men and women, and then putting it in another body, I think, and they're doing that. That's been happening, and people have seen. They've had glimpses of these labs. I mean, there's pictures, not photographs, but like drawings of what people have seen, and a lot of them is happening underground or underground inside the moon, where they're growing these hybrids.
Interesting question here because I believe karma. I've had karma happen to me, so I believe in it. Max wants to know, do you think children are born into the karma of their parents?
I love that question. That is a great question because this is what I was saying in the cosmic slingshot is that, like, for instance, Christians think that. They think of generational curses. That's what it's called. It even says so in the Bible, but it's misinterpreted because they block out any kind of knowledge or belief in reincarnation. So they think that a soul is going to come through and be cursed with the sins of their ancestors or their parents. Okay. And I thought that for a long time too, until I uncovered this and say, wait a minute, because the universe, especially God's, you know, justice and sovereignty, it's just and it's fair. So you're not suffering for the sins of your ancestors. You're suffering for your own sins that you did in a past life. And the reason that you come through that bloodline is because it's similarities. It's like frequency. It's a match. And you know, whether it's a family, a tribe, or a particular parent, whether it's your father or your mother, that are facilitating the soul to either correct it, like maybe you pick those parents to correct that problem, and it's not their sin, it's actually yours. And that this information, and anyone who really wants to feel empowered, this is empowering, in my opinion, because you take responsibility for yourself, for your own soul, instead of blaming it on your parents or your ancestors. Oh, they did something terrible in another life. I never even knew who they were, and here I am suffering for it. That doesn't make any sense. And that's not just. And God is not doing that. God is putting you into a family that may mirror some of those issues, or maybe you all have the same problems. You know what I mean? It's like similarity, like attracts like, but they're yours. So when you own them and you go, I did this and I'm going to undo this, that's empowering.
This is an interesting question. Are we tuned into certain frequencies that we can't see everything else going around us while alive?
100%. Yes. And that's why, like, things like cats, for instance, like cats and dogs, but cats a little bit more than dogs. They're able to pick up on those frequencies. They can see things we can't see, just like the aliens can see stuff we can't see. That doesn't mean that we can't, that we're like, you know, because human beings can, but we have to work at it, right? So we have to go into meditation or consciousness or astral projection or remote viewing and all this stuff to see the things that most people can't see. And part of that has to do with the dumbing down of the DNA, because we only got 2 strands that are operating. So we think this is our reality. When we get those other 10 strands, you know, hooked up again, we'll be able to see things clearly. And that's the promises of God.
Yeah, and I think a couple of times I somehow got tuned into that other side of reality. So I agree with that question because I saw some weird stuff that I didn't. They could have been hallucinations or dreams, but they seemed very real at the time. But I won't get into that too much so people don't think I'm crazy.
I don't think,
Uh,
see,
Bob says, do experiences of our past lives percolate in the unconscious mind and become either wanted or unwanted characteristics in this life?
yes. Yes, definitely. I think that, like, trauma leaves a mark on the soul. Um, and this is one of the things that I've come to, like, unpack and heal and transform, from my past life, from this life, and it repeats. So, and trauma is also an implant. So some of it has to do with, like, getting free of these implants so that you're not repeating on, like, habit patterns and attracting the same thing over and over again, which is the unconscious mind. So to take the unconscious mind and make it conscious is is healing, cathartic, and empowering, because it puts you, you know, as the driver of, your life, as opposed to being on automatic. And the past life stuff is buried in the unconscious. And this is what I was telling Christians. It's like, if they're all wondering, like, why are they suffering? They're suffering from their ancestors' sins. It's like, what about looking at your own? Because all you have to do, and it's so simple that people miss it. Okay, they make all these complicated religious dogmas about it, and it just has to do with a simple thing of, talking to God, repenting, right? Repentance, every single prayer of repentance gets answered and creates deliverance, which brings healing from God, and calling on the name of the Lord and getting saved. It's not like, oh, I got to do this, I have to dress a certain way, I have to be a certain thing, like what religious dogma dictates. It's relationship. So if you come into right relationship with the living God, then he's going to help you get into right relationship with yourself, because we're made in the image and likeness of the gods. So if the kingdom of God is living within us, then we can uncover what's happening in the unconscious and have victory over those negative habit patterns and shift it, which brings healing, not just to us, but everyone that we're in relationship with.
American Road Warrior says, have you or others studied percentages of experiencers or anomalies are due to reincarnation?
Yes, that's the point that I'm making in this book about alien abductions, is that the most of us who have been through it, it began in the past. It's like, and I don't think there's any new souls on the planet right now. So everyone that's here has either been here before or has come here from another. They're incarnating through these bloodlines, these hybrids. There's many different hybrids. Even the Bible talks about, like, Raphaim and Anakim and Nephilim and Satan's seed and the serpent seed and Cain's seed and the Elohim seed. And that's why there's such a potpourri of different types of people here. So things that happen in the past get an opportunity to get corrected here. And the alien abductions has to do with something that we agreed to in the past. And once you see that and sort of take responsibility for it, it can end. Just like you get a divorce, you stop, that's it, it's over. And it's like the same type of thing, because they operate, believe it or not, on a legal ground. So it's like that old Hermetic philosophy, as above, so below. And just like we have courts on earth that follow earthly laws, there's courts in heaven, the courts of heaven, which follows spiritual laws. So when you make agreements, they carry over. And they can also be called demonic assignments. So that gives the Greys the opening and the claim to abduct you. And when you end that, then they can't. It's like they hit the wall.
Are they abducting us to upgrade us through the generations? This person is wondering, Paul is wondering.
Well, there's a couple of things going on here. So one is that the alien human hybrids, that they're growing off the planet, because this is one level of it, is that they're waiting at an appointed time in the future to replace humans. So it's the ultimate replacement theology. So if you go back into, like the stuff I write about with Rome and what Rome did to the Jews and Israel and how they wanted to replace Israel with this new form of Christianity that was anti-Semitic, that all is going to come full circle in this end time war. And so who gave them that idea to do that? And this is what I've written about, is that it's the aliens. So they're implanted on Earth, okay? And I've actually seen this implant, and it's a cruciform. And if you've seen Mission Impossible, the whole plot of that movie was to find this key to a nuclear submarine, and and it was in the shape of a cruciform. And when I saw that, I was like, whoa, that's exactly what I saw in the spirit, in the etheric realm, that's stuck in people's etheric bodies, that keeps them looping in this religious spirit, religious war, dogmas, all this stuff that goes on. So they get into us through these implants. And the Church of Rome was implanted a long time ago by the draconians, the reptilians. In fact, you can't make this stuff up. They changed their name to Vatican, and the word Vatican in Latin means divining serpent. And they named it after the goddess Vaticanus, who was this goddess who did readings, psychic readings with the snakes all over her. So she was called the serpent goddess. They named the church after the Catholic Church after that. So you have to wonder, like, what is this about? Is this about worshiping Lucifer, the serpent, or is it about worshiping the God of humans, which is Melchizedek, Yeshua, Jesus Christ, the human form? Because this is serpent stuff. So, and all of us, let's be fair, okay? We're Homo sapiens sapiens. We're a hybrid, okay? Because our brains have 3 levels to it. We've got the medulla oblongata, which they call the lizard brain, or, Carl Sagan wrote a whole book about that, like, the fight, flight, flee, impulse that we have. And then on top of that is the mammalian brain. That's the animal. That's what we have in common with the animals. And then on top of that, they call the Brahman brain, which is the God, the seed of God in us, the soul, So we're a bit of a hybrid as well. And, we have free will. So it's a matter of which part of us we want to give more energy and power and attention to, and that's up to each one individually.
Very interesting. Well, thank you for being so thorough with the fan questions. You do have
But
your books on Amazon as
yes,
well as your website. So you want to fill fans in on where they can pick them up?
yes, thank you. Yes, Amazon. I have 3 books now in audio, which is book 1, Who's Who in the Cosmic Zoo, book 3, Who Are the Angels, and book 5, The Heavens, which is all about Nibiru. Everything else is in Kindle and paperback, and I sell PDFs on my website for people who need to put it through those text to audio programs until I get the rest of the books on audio. But yeah, Amazon or my website, they can go to. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And is it a complicated process to get your book on audio?
Yes, but I got lucky with this beta test. And so they gave me 3 books. So those are the ones that are out there at the moment.
Excellent. So who's
Yeah.
who in the cosmic zoo.com. I'll let you finish us off with the final thought to the fans here.
Well, have faith. Faith is a currency, and we all need it now. And look up.